Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of How Stories Work. Today, I want to talk about The Lost Daughter, written and directed by Maggie Gyllenhaal. It's absolutely phenomenal. Typically, when I'm watching film, I usually don't think of the story structure that's going on while I'm going through it. And this one was particularly that way in that I couldn't tell what the heck was going on, and I had a really hard time connecting with it. I couldn't put it down into a nice, clean structure. It was really just the overall feeling and the overall experience of that I really loved. It's the kind of film that haunts you days after, and then you keep thinking about it. You go to sleep thinking about it, and then you wake up the next day and you wonder what it all meant. I finally today figured out the story form and put it into subtext. And there were some really interesting things that you can learn from it that I wanted to share with everybody. Here I'm in subtext, and this is The Lost Daughter. And the premise that comes out of it is opening yourself up to being judged by others manages being inadequate at something while sending you down the path of becoming more present. Now, if you followed anything else to do with subtext, usually the premises are a little clearer and they're a little more black and white. Get rid of this and then you can triumph from that kind of thing. This one is very different in that it is about opening yourself up to something and doing that changes the direction your life is headed. It doesn't necessarily fix anything or solve any problems, but there is a balance of inequities there. And that's why during the film, it was hard for me emotionally to get attached to everything that was going on because I'm typically somebody who sees problems and if there's a problem, here's a solution, it needs to be fixed. And it's hard for me to empathize with the main character of the story because she is someone who is balancing inequity. She's not really solving any problems. She's managing what's going on. And she does things that don't really make sense to me, which is clearly the sign that there is a different kind of story structure going on. And that's reflected in the premise here. The premise is the meaning of the story, what it's trying to get across. When you take in everything from beginning to end, what is the overall general statement or argument that the author is making? One of the first things that stands out in the film is the narrative personality. This is a psychological drama, and in a psychological drama, the arrangement of the four through lines is like this, where the objective story plot is in the psychology domain, and the main character through line, her personal issues, are in the mind domain. And to balance those two through lines out, the influence character will be in the universe domain, and the relationship story will be in the physics domain. So what that means is everybody in the story will be coming into conflict over the way that they think. So their psychologies, and that the main character will be dealing with a fixed mindset. The influence character will be somebody who challenges the main character's personal issues based on the situation, the external universe where things are in that person's life. And then the relationship between the two of them is going to grow through activities, through doing things. And that's how you balance out a complete story. And it's a conventional psychological drama in that the major changes of direction are through actions. In the beginning, the daughter is lost, then the doll goes lost, and then at the end, the doll is returned. It's very simple like that. Looking at those four perspectives, we have the main character, which is Olivia Colman, Lita Caruso, and then her influence character is Nina. And if you've ever seen the cliched, you and I are both alike, that's how these two are connected because Lita is seeing herself in Nina, and that's how they connect. Because it's such a great screenplay and it's so sophisticated, you get that same feeling without the heavy-handed, ham-fisted dialogue of you and I are both alike. But clearly, that's what's going on. The relationship, how they grow, are the activities they do as mothers. One of the clearest ones is the scene with the hat, where she can't tell how to keep the hat on her head. So she's, oh, here, this is what my mother taught me. And she shows her what to do with pin and that kind of stuff. So they grow closer based on activities like that. That's how they grow in their relationship. And then finally, the objective story, the thing that ties everybody in together is this idea of what to do with Elena, which is Nina's daughter, because she's never happy. The doll goes missing and they're trying to figure out, okay, what are we supposed to do with her? Everybody is involved in that, even Ed Harris, all that kind of stuff goes into the objective story plot because it brings everybody together. And then the Olivia Colman character, Lita, her personal issue is this mindset that she doesn't think she's a very good person. She's mean, she's cruel, That's what she thinks about herself. And that's what she's going through, is this awful feeling of, I'm not a good person. And then she sees herself reflected in the universe through Nina, who is going through the same sort of stuff. She's stuck with this guy, Tony, and she's also hooking up with the guy that works at the place where they're staying, and just doesn't know what to do with her daughter. And that's the influence or the challenge that is coming into Lita's life. I'm going to skip the dramatic argument here and go to the premise setting. So these three choices are what organize how this is put together. The first one is perhaps the most important one, which is what I was talking about in the beginning with the whole problem solving thing. How the structure of the story is organized is through relationships, which means that the way these acts are put together and the way things are butted up against each other is less to do about problem solving and more about managing and balancing the inequities that we face in life. One isn't better than the other. It's just a focus of structure, like how's it going to be laid out. The argument of this premise is not to simply grow, but to adjust, to almost like change direction. Direction, because there isn't a goal that solves everything. So it's not a triumph. It's not a tragedy, which is why there'll be conversations over what the ending means, is because there is just this sense of becoming present. In a relationship structured story, you don't have triumphs, you don't have tragedies, you have these feelings of whether or not, if she's coming to a place where she's more present, she is when she's actually able to connect with her daughters again. When you plug these three in there, and then you come back up here and you look at what is the actual argument that's going on in the story, the balance between the two of them is this idea of evaluation and reevaluation. Those are the motivating forces. So an evaluation is just a judgment. Okay, this is the way things are. This is how it goes. And that's an initial evaluation. Reevaluation is a judgment that's continually being reevaluated, rejudged, recriticized. You can see in the objective story, Lita is very judgmental. No, I'm not moving. This is how it is. It's never going to work out for you. Very judgmental because she herself is a very judgmental person. And she's able to say, hey, I'm a cruel person. I'm a mean person. That's her side of it. On the other side is Nina, who's at the beginning of Lita's journey, where she's constantly reevaluating. Am I good enough for this? Am I good enough mother? Am I going to be able to do these sort of things? I don't know if I could do this. That's the argument between those two, because one of them eventually has to win out in the end in order to prove the author's point of view. Because it's a story of presence, of just remaining present, and it's getting to this point of, if you just open yourself up to being judged by others, that will manage your being inadequate at something while then bringing you down that path of becoming more present, then you would need to have Lita an evaluation and Nina an reevaluation. And then that gets you this story form here at the very bottom. When I plug in everything that's up there at the top, I get an entire schematic of the character and plot dynamics that are going on in the story, and then also what's happening in each of those four through lines. So here you can see in the objective story, when it comes to what everybody's concerned about is what to do with Elena, the whole issue, the thematic issue, the focus of the story is on deficiency. It's essentially, are you good enough to be a mother? Are you good enough to be able to do this thing? And feeling deficient is what brings them together. And really, that's the overall objective story that Gyllenhaal was looking at from afar, looking at the kind of inequities and conflicts that come up because of these feelings of not being adequate enough, and whether or not you want to do something or you won't do these sort of things, all this sort of stuff that's going on with the two mothers. In Lita, in the Olivia Colman character, her issue is doubt, which is the fact that she just completely doubts whether or not she's a good person. And over here we have Nina. Her issue is whether or not she can actually do it. She's trying to do something that she might not be really great at. And her concern is her present situation of where the heck is this doll and where's Tony and that kind of stuff. And this is really great to balance out these other three. The relationship is going to grow through learning, which is learning how to be a mother, learning what's actually going on, which is why you have that nice thing with the pin in the hat. The issue there are preconditions, which is a fancy word of saying, what are the kind of issues that come up when you're beholden to somebody else? When it comes to motherhood, the idea that these balancing issues of preconditions, what are the sort of things that are put onto you because of this other child, versus these feelings of deficiency, whether or not you're good enough. One is internal and one's more external, and that's how they balance each other out. And it's beautiful, just works out so great in the film how those two issues are balancing out each other. Her personal journey, Lita's personal journey, she's overwhelmed with all these feelings of reevaluation. Essentially, all the stuff she's going through about her past and everything that's leading up there. That's the backstory for this actual story. That's the condition of her state of mind. She's reevaluating until finally at the end, she adjusts, she changes direction by instead of judging everybody else, it's almost like she opens herself up to judgment from other people. And not even at the end, because it's a slow growth, a balance of it. When she actually goes outside when Ed Harris wants to go for a smoke, she doesn't say anything. A problem solver would be like, hey, no, don't go out there. You're going to see the doll and then everything is going to be ruined. She lets him out there because what she's doing is opening herself up to being judged by others. And it manages that being inadequate at something. Opening yourself up to those evaluations will manage those feelings of deficiency. And then while you do that, it's going to change the direction and bring you to a place where you can become more present. She pulls that balancing motivation into herself and then allows herself to be judged fully by Nina when she reveals that she took the doll and she's not even sure why she admitted she was just playing. She was just doing something. And that's why Nina just slips heavier back into the reevaluation, completely changes her mind about who Lita was and stabs her and leaves and tells her to watch her back. That's why it's not a complete happy ending. There's an element of happiness there to when she's actually able to make that phone call, but it's not something that's an all out triumphant sort of feeling. The other thing I noticed when I was putting this together, within each through line, there are connective points that connect the different four through lines together that overlap their particular look at conflict. In other words, if these were four different towers, these would be strings that are tying them all together. The one that I really loved that jumped out was within the main character, there'll be these two story points of the unique ability and the critical flaw. And her unique ability is what could actually bring the objective story to some sort of relative success or put it to more of that triumphant, composed point of view for everybody. Hers is investigation because she's the one who could bring the whole investigation to an end as to where the doll is because she has the doll. She's holding all the keys. That's her unique ability, which is amazing. It's so great. That's such a natural thing that was put into the story. And then this weird thing about attempt, because it's like, what are you even doing that for? That's what kind of draws her out of that. And even more connecting with her own daughters. Like she doesn't even like calling them on the phone. That's not even something that she likes to do. That's balanced out with the challenging agent from Nina of work, which is a way of saying whether or not she can do the things that she does or what it is that she actually does in a way that reflects Lita's life, reflects the kind of challenges that she went through. But her doubts are what lessen that impact. Really, the production condition here is the combination of Elena, the small child, and then also Nina. Production is making mountains out of molehills, making more of something. This thought process of whether or not the potential is there to be able to do the kind of things that she needs to do. And the more she resembles what it was that Lita went through, the more Nina has that influence to get her to a place where she can finally make that change and return the doll. You can see the same issue of deficiency that's in the objective story. It's a way of slowing down the relationship story and the feeling of not being good enough. Conflict between the two of them lessens when there is this sense of shared deficiency and not being good enough. And even the deficiencies of not being able to communicate to the other person, that's when they actually separate from one another. You can see the plot progression here is fantastic because the doing is the taking care of the child, the obtaining is the taking of the doll, the learning is all the stuff where the two of them learn how much they reflect each other. And then finally, understanding in their relationship when she reveals to her, hey, I've been holding this doll. And it's like, what the heck is wrong with you? Down in the objective story to balance out those two items of prerequisites and deficiency, to balance out the connective items that are in the relationship are the catalyst and inhibitor of permission and preconditions. Permission is what you can and can't do. You really can't talk to these people like this. You can't take somebody's doll. I can't do anything when Tony's not here. The conflict in this story, whether or not Ed Harris has permission to come over and even talk to her. And then the inhibitor, what brings it down is doing things on behalf of other people, doing what's best for Elena is what kind of slows it down and lowers the kind of overwhelming feelings in the objective story, the overwhelming feelings of inequity. As you can see, this is a really long How Stories Work. It's twice as long as it usually is, which is typically the case when you have a story that is structured around relationships, or in the dramatic theory of story, is a holistic mindset as opposed to a linear mindset. When it comes time to explain all the things that go on in a holistic story, it's all about balancing all the different things that are going on. It's not really about flipping a switch and fixing things. It just takes a lot longer to explain. I'm really grateful to be able to have the experience of seeing what it's like to go through all of these different inequities and experiencing what it's like to try and balance everything. If you haven't seen it, I would strongly suggest to see it. You might learn a thing or two about what it's like to live a different kind of life. That's it for How Stories Work. If you have any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, I will see you next time.